What's going on, Military Cashflow family? Hey, what's going on with you today, Mike?
What's going on, man? So I just told you right before we started recording this about this whole little debacle with some of my finances. Long story short, guys, understand that sometimes you might get too big for your britches, and when it rains, it fucking pours. Literally, I got hit with everything all at once. And although I was very cash heavy, my reserves were great, it still wasn't enough. So I think this is just a good opportunity to realize, like, no matter how prepared you are and all the lessons you learn, things can still happen, right? We hear all these greats all the time talk about how they lost everything and they had to kind of build it from scratch. Luckily, I haven't lost everything, but I have been hit hard. So that's something I'm going through personally. And it's an opportunity to share it with the audience, guys. Like, shit happens no matter what part of the journey you're along. So that's my biggest, I guess, thing that's going on right now. But what about you, man? What you got going on?
Hey, man, I think that's an awesome story, especially like with the guests, and we'll talk about that here in a little bit. But I mean, if you guys don't know, we do batch recording, right? So we actually haven't recorded in over 2 months. So we loaded up. So I think you're probably going to hear this sometime in late February, maybe. We're recording it in like mid-January. So I mean, we're loaded up. So I say all that to say that there's a lot that's been going on over the last 2 months. I mean, you just heard Mike's story, right? He's dealing with some stuff and he's about to sell some things off and get himself right and everything. And yo, man, I've had some failures on my side too, man. So I already told you guys about I was going back wholesaling, right? 2 months or like maybe 4 months ago. I was like, yeah, man, I'm getting back into wholesaling. It's already we already dismantled the wholesaling thing, man. I failed again, not once but twice. Failed twice, dude. So yeah, no longer wholesaling anymore. Right now, I'm just kind of sitting on some cash and trying to figure out what the next move is, man. So that's where I'm at right now. But just like today's guest, man, we keep moving forward, and we don't define it as a failure until we literally give up. And I'm not giving up. Obviously, Mike's not giving up. I gave up on wholesaling. So let me say that. But real estate.
You changed direction. You changed direction.
I did a pivot. I pivoted. Yeah. I didn't give up. But and Mike's not giving up, and neither is our guest Kamil. So Kamil Baldyga, right? He is he's down in Fayetteville, and he transitioned out of the Army. He was in it for 6 years, transitioned out, and then started getting into real estate. He got his license and then also started buying properties. And the biggest takeaway that I received from this story was just be careful on how fast you move. Right? How fast you move. We talk about a lot of things, but we also talk about a lot of the lessons that he learned because he was moving too fast and how he was structuring things with his partners. Great lessons learned. But at the end of it, it was still a huge success. So Mike.
Yeah. So to that point, like he mentions in this podcast or in this interview, whatever, how much he's read, how much he's been told, how much he's been, how much he knew what the wrong answer was, and yet he still did it. And I think this is really important because that comes back to literally Dan and I, our experiences that we just told you, where we just had these recent failures and we knew the right fucking answer and we still got hit with it. So the whole point to this, guys, is like, you have to be comfortable going out there and experimenting. You have to, and you have to understand that L you take is just a lesson learned. And as long as you can define your failure from the beginning, which is my new fucking motto for 2022. I swear to God, that if you can define your failure from the beginning, then you can get through those types of loopholes. You know what I mean? So he covered a lot of stuff, and I'm really excited for you guys to hear this stuff. So without further ado, let's get to it.
What's going on, Military Cashflow family? Today we got Kamil Baldyga on the show today. Hey, thanks a lot, Kamil, for coming on. Please let us know a little bit about yourself, who you are, where you're from, and what you're doing in the real estate space.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name's Kamil. I'm a typical Polish dude from the Chicago suburbs. I'm 25 years old. I was in the military for like 6.5 years. I officially got out last June timeframe. And I've been a real estate agent and a real estate investor since.
Excellent. Okay.
You're
So
a typical Polish dude
that's
from
what I was
the
going to hit on
suburbs.
too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
is that a thing? Y'all have a big Polish demographic in Chicago?
It's the number 2 biggest Polish population in the world, right behind Warsaw. Fun fact.
No shit.
What?
There's a lot of us out there.
I figured it would have been like most immigrants would have went to the East Coast, like like New York, Massachusetts, like that area somewhere. So that's interesting. They kind of migrated to Chicago instead, huh?
Where's Warsaw? You said it's next to
Poland.
Warsaw?
No, Warsaw is the most densely populated city of Polacks, but it's in Poland. It's the capital city.
Oh, got it. See, I'm very uneducated, guys. Sorry about that. I'm very uncultured. I was like, where the hell's Warsaw? He's like, that's Poland. All right, cool. Damn, didn't know that. Fun fact of the day. So tell us about that journey, man. From you saying typical Polish guy in Chicago. What did that look like? Did you actually live in Poland before you came over? Are you first generation born and raised here? What's your story there?
Yeah, so I am first generation, born in the US. Pretty much my entire family, mom and dad, from Poland. Everyone but maybe a couple of my cousins were born here. But besides a few of us that are odd ones out, most of my family is from Poland. So Polish is actually my first language that I learned, technically. English is my second, but obviously way more practice with English here in the States. But yeah.
Oh, that's dope, man. That's dope. So transition. So what made you even join the military? And then I want to get into like how we transition into the real estate. I see you got the iHouse Hack shirt on there, clear indicator.
Oh, yeah.
Right. So what was that transition like from the military to rocking the iHouse Hack t-shirts?
Yeah. So what brought me to the military is I was always kind of interested in it, guy always playing with airsoft guns and playing army with my friends and whatnot. But I never really wanted to pull the trigger on it until I think senior year of high school. I wouldn't necessarily call myself like a dumb high school student, but I was definitely just not interested in school. It wasn't doing it for me. I didn't really see the point behind it. Senior year, I realized like, hey, college is coming. And, my parents, immigrants from Poland, they did their best to support me financially, but it was very much like, growing up, it was very much like, hey, son, if you want something, like you got to figure it out, which growing up was kind of tough, especially when my parents, when I was younger, didn't really speak English all that well. But looking back on it, was probably like the best thing they did for me, just like raising me, just very self-sustaining, very find the solution in the problems. So yeah, senior year, I decided to go to college, Western Illinois University, very small college, couple bars, bunch of cornfields, super cool place. And freshman year, I realized, my freshman year, first semester, I didn't know how I was going to pay for college. I really didn't. I did not expect myself to be there past the first semester. And then I ran into the ROTC program, started talking to me about scholarships, how cool it was. And I was like, all right, I'm going into the Guard. I'm enlisting. We're going to make this happen. Essentially, the next summer, went to basic training, came back, contracted with ROTC, and just kind of commissioned from there and went into the Army and yeah, all that fun stuff.
Did your thing, man. Okay, nice. So you got the joined the Army from there, and then did the ROTC route. So really quick, because I know a lot of our listeners have talked about or have asked at least about the commissioning sources, right? Like especially you said you went to basic training. Usually people don't equate basic training with ROTC and join the officer side. I'm assuming that's like that simultaneous membership program, the
SMP, baby.
What's that all? Can you give us a quick like brief overview? What's that look like, man? And what's the advantage of that?
So it's been a minute since I remember the specifics.
I don't have to be specifics. I'm just talking, just give us a once over the world, man.
Yeah, I pretty much started hanging out first semester with the ROTC people, and they're like, hey, we can give you scholarships, which I was like, super cool. And we had a National Guard recruiter that was at our school, and just kind of speaking with him, and he was speaking with like all the cadre there, right? They pretty much mentioned like, hey, if you want to like get a step ahead of everybody, go to basic training, right? Get that enlisted level of Army education, we'll call it. And it'll really set you apart. On top of that, you'll be making additional money because you get the ROTC stipend plus drill pay, the GI Bill, all that fun stuff. So just overall, just to set me apart, and then financially to really put me in a good spot, I decided to first enlist, go into the Guard, and then I came back and contracted S&P program. So I still did all your fun ROTC stuff, still did the FTXs, did all the labs, all that cool stuff, but I would still drill at a Guard unit once a month. And yeah, I was a cadet there. So it was like an assistant officer, which really meant I did everything from like a private level to captain level. It was a lot of experience, super fun.
Nice, man.
I'll tell you, man, I love the S&P program. It's not talked about enough. For those who don't know, I was in the S&P program and I elected to decline my commission, but I did the same thing. Another thing with the Guard is, depending on the time and depending on the MOS, you could potentially get a signing bonus for joining the S&P, or I'm sorry, for joining the Guard, right? And that carries over. As he mentioned, you have the this RLT stipend plus the drill pay. And let's be honest, the drill pay is like a couple $100 a month. But when you're in college, that's a lot of goddamn money. You know what I mean? And to his point, tuition assistance too. So what I was doing now, I had to pay this back because I left the program. But I was able to take tuition assistance and the scholarship and actually receive a refund. So if you really play your shit right, I mean, you can make a lot of money doing that S&P program, man. You really can.
One of the big things that I was like kind of low key jealous about, because I was a regular ROTC dude, right? And I almost wish I would have did the S&P program, because I noticed with them, when we all commissioned, they started off with like 3 to 4 years time in service. And if you guys don't realize, if you look at the pay scale, man, that's like a 500, it might even be more than that. It was like a $500 to $700 bone, or like a monthly difference between people who did the regular ROTC program and what they did. And meanwhile, all the advantages that Mike and both Kamil have already outlined, plus you're starting off with additional time in service, which gives you an additional raise like throughout your military career. So it's a pretty cool, I thought it was a pretty cool thing.
Isn't it something like if you so it's additional time in service. So, oh yeah, you're right, for the pay grade. So when you retire at 20, you basically retire with 24. Is that right?
Yes, correct. Whatever it is. Like, so my wife, for example, she's got like, I mean, she's only been an officer for, I think like coming up on 3 years, maybe. And she has like 14 years time in service. And most of that time was spent in reserves. And the same thing with the S&P cadets that I saw as well, like guys that I graduated with, came in the same time as I did. They had 4 years time in service when I was still on 0. So if you look at that pay scale, we talked about it and we looked at the pay scale, and I was like, man, I should have did this stuff, man. And you got paid for going to drill. Sometimes you didn't even have to go to the drill. You know, it's kind of wacky, but yeah,
pays to start early.
Yeah, it
definitely absolutely. So hey, fun facts. So since we're talking about Illinois, where did you go to school again, man?
Western Illinois University in Macomb.
At Macomb. And guess what, guys? I got about 10 student rentals in Macomb, Illinois, and they're performing beautifully. And when Kamil had told me, he was like, oh, no shit, I went to Western Illinois. I was like, well, hello, I'm renting to people like him. So tell me, man, what was that college student like? Now I'm just being nosy because I want to check in on my rentals here. What's the college student life like in Western Illinois University?
So I loved it. I loved all 4 years of it. It was super fun. It used to be a huge party school. And just, I mean, coming at it bluntly, it is a school that's struggling to get more admissions, and it has been for a couple of years now. Yeah, it's just a struggling school. I don't know how else to put it.
Oh man, you just like rained on his
parade there. Sprinkling some bad news into there.
On my student rentals, man.
What's funny though, I mean, my student rentals are performing well. If it's a struggling school, I'd love to rejuvenate it to get it popping over there.
And speaking as a college student, right? I would say if you're planning on having rentals in a college area, especially Macomb, like definitely plan a little more than like 5% for maintenance and repairs. Plan a little more for that.
That's very true. I had to put money, bro, just between the snow and like other they're just all old ass homes too. So
yeah.
But I always thought that was interesting. When Kamil told me that we were at a party somewhere. Oh yeah, in the upper loft over here at the apartment. And man, I was like, who in the hell knows about Macomb? Nobody has ever heard of it. And sure as shit, he's been over there going to school. That's pretty awesome, man.
Hey, man.
So tell us about that transition, man. So you made it out of ROTC, you graduated, you commissioned, and then you stepped into the military. Tell us about that, man. Was it everything that you hoped it to be?
Oh, so I always knew I wasn't going to do the full 20. It just, I don't know. I would see the old crusty officers. I'm just like, I don't really enjoy what you're doing. I like the cool guy aspect of it, just being with the soldiers, the platoon, all that stuff. I don't know. I went into active duty thinking I'm going to give it everything I've got, right? Just kind of, I don't know, plan is if I'm going to stay in for 20 years, but always have that thing in the back of my mind of like, have options so you can get out when you need to. Really gave it my all, not to like toot my own horn, but like, I really gave it my all. You know what I mean? It was my job. Like I took pride in my job. I was going to do what I could. Went to Korea, had a great time there. But after that year, I was definitely burnt out. I was just physically, mentally, emotionally, I was just very burnt out. It was a very tough duty station to be at, especially if you're air defense. And then I came to Fort Bragg and a series of events happened. And there were things that like pushed me out of the military. And then there were things that pulled me out of the military, but I eventually decided just to pull the trigger and get out and pursue different things.
Now, while you were transitioning or while you were experiencing all of that, all that the military had to offer you, giving it all, you're figuring out whether you want to, I mean, you pretty much already knew you were going to get out, but while you were going through that process, right, were you investing during that time, or had you gotten the real estate bug, or had that itch been scratched, or like, where did the discovery of real estate come from? Was it while you were in, or was it while you were out?
Yeah, so I would say it all really started, I think, senior year, second semester when I was in college, because my college, I was a law enforcement major. So they had us intern with a law enforcement agency, which I did with the Illinois Conservation Police, kind of like game wardens. And the officer I would ride with would listen to Dave Ramsey, which, if you guys know, is, yeah. So listen to Dave Ramsey, and after like essentially being indoctrinated, listening to like 4 of his like podcast episodes a day, I was like, all right, I'm going to like get my finances in order. I'm going to pay off all my debt, be super frugal. And I started doing that. And I continued to do that up until I think it was second month of my time in Korea. And I'm there for like 12 months. And at that point I paid off all my debt, living super frugal. And I'm just sitting there and I'm like, all right, now what? Like I have all this money. I started this thing called like a future fund, which I didn't know what I was going to do with this money, but I was just saving it, still living super frugal, because at this point it's just, I have it. And I started thinking like, and this was the first time that I was like away from all other influences. Like my family wasn't around, right? Because I'm in Korea. My friends aren't really around. I'm around like new people. And I'm in this barracks room by myself. And I'm like, what do I actually want out of life? And I started dreaming big, like I want that nice truck, right? Like I want that hunting land. I want that like boat to go fishing on. And I'm like, yo, the Dave Ramsey method doesn't really work, like Dave Ramsey is it's great, but it's very play not to lose, not to win. You know what I mean? So I started thinking, I'm like, all right, well, I need to make more money. All my time's being sucked up by the military right now. Like I need to look at how I can make money without really working. And then passive income came along. So I started Googling, how can I do passive income? And I found everything from like, filling out, what was it, like surveys online or something to make extra money on side, which I made like 6 cents off of that maybe.
Yep.
And a bunch of other stuff. And I always saw real estate pop up as like number 1 or 2, but I always blew it off. I'm like, I'm not a landlord, man. Like I can't do that. But then one of my warrant officers, just briefly mentioned that she invests in real estate, and I started a conversation with her, and then she turned me on to active duty passive income, which is essentially an organization that helps service members invest using their VA loan, right? So from that point on, I like jumped on to active duty passive income, their website, was like, all right, like I'm gonna do this, right? I decided like, I know what I want out of life, and I'm gonna start taking the steps to get there. And for like 9 months, I think every Sunday for sure, and occasionally like Saturdays on the weekends, I would sit there, take online courses, start reading and YouTube videos, yeah, just starting my education journey for like 9 months from there.
Yeah, man, that's usually how it starts, dude. I think a lot of people get introduced to, I guess they get introduced to real estate through like financial literacy, right? Just boning up on their just foundational skills, right? And Dave Ramsey is that person that, like, man, he's great with those foundational skills, those baby steps that he teaches and everything like that. The only issue comes when you get to like one of the higher steps. You know, he says like, hey, pay off your whole entire house before buying a rental property, or, you know, these little weird things. Like, man, you know, just like you said, play not to lose instead of playing to win, right? I think once you get to those higher steps, then it's time to kind of graduate onto, I guess, more of a Grant Cardone-ish like mindset,
or Robert Kiyosaki mindset, right? Because I love the debate between like Dave Ramsey and anybody goddamn else, right? Or it's Susie Orman and Dave Ramsey over here and everybody else over here. And you know, Dave Ramsey and Susie Orman, they have a great place for those who need that introduction, who need the wake-up call, right? But to your point, Kamil, like, after I paid off debt, I mean, why, after you're really understanding the full spectrum of financial literacy, why the hell would I pay off debt at a 2.7% interest rate that's locked in for 30 years? Why the fuck would I pay that off? Like, that's the cheapest money you'll ever find, right? So, I mean, there's always different layers, and kudos to you for being able to elevate above that, right? And see like, yo, all right, cool, I got it. I got my numbers right. I got my finances in order, but there's something more.
And if you do that, you'll be, you're going to continue doing that, but you're planning to be set and put yourself financially, like, in a great financial place when you're like 65. Man, I think that's who he teaches to. He speaks to everybody that's trying to get into the game and play that long game until you reach 65. Not like he doesn't really teach prosperity to 30 and 40-year-olds. He's talking about, you know, hey, let's make it to 65 and have this big retirement nest egg. And I mean, it's kind of weird. So
that's a really good point, because I mean, you're right. He's speaking to the people who work the 9 to 5, who never have any ambitions to start their own business and everything else. As soon as you want to start your own business, you got to switch your source there. So Kamil, where did that mindset of the lifestyle that you wanted, right? The lifestyle that you dreamt of, that you visioned, where did that mindset come from? Was it due to like your childhood where you're like, damn, I wish I had, or was it something you were exposed to while you were an adult? Talk to us a little bit about that.
I think it's a combination of a lot of things. Definitely the way I was raised, right? Like, I don't want to speak like my parents didn't give me anything like growing up. They obviously did their best, but I mean, by doing their best, they were working all the time. You know what I mean? It was very difficult to like spend time with them. When I did spend time with them, I would see how tired they were from working. And I'm just like, I don't know, like, I knew it didn't have to be that way. And I think growing up, I was always kind of like a problem child. I always like to ask why, right? And just like very genuinely. And yeah, I don't know. I just started asking the question, like, why does life have to be like that? How are all these other people living like essentially a dream life, not working so hard, right? Like these successful business people, obviously someone's doing it, so it's doable. How? And it's like, why do I need to wait till 65 to retire? Like, what am I going to do for fun at 65? I'm going to go hike a mountain if my body will let me? Like, no. You know what I mean? So I'm like, there's things out there. I just need to find out how to do it. Does that answer the question?
Oh yeah, for sure.
So
I think it's super important.
Go ahead, Mike. Go ahead.
Right. No, I was just going to say, I think it's super important for everybody to find their own little reason along the journey, right? I know a lot of us saw our parents struggle in one way or another, and that was a turnoff. Not in a bad way, right? Like, we respect our parents, but it's like, I love you, but damn, I don't want to do that. You know what I mean? Not until I'm 70. Like my dad, he's 63 still. He's like, I got 5 more years. The fuck? You could retire, right? I don't want that, right? So a lot of us have that type of influence, and sometimes a lot of us are raised in these type of like ecosystems where we don't even know the possibilities. And it takes us to become 18, 19 or joining the military to realize like, oh shit, I could, people do this. I didn't eat my first steak until I was like 15. No, that's a true story. So it's like those things, you know what I mean? So it's always curious or interesting for me to kind of dig into that and see like, what the hell was it that finally like opened up that third eye or whatever. It's like, oh shit, this is possible.
Yeah, man, that's one thing I really. No, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I just want to like throw in 2 cents. I do think the military is amazing at like just exposing you to this like weird petri dish of like everybody in the US.
Yeah.
And like just talking to like an officer who maybe is like has multiple businesses or maybe even a private whose like parents have like everything. It just opens
or
your
a
mind
private
so
who has a
much.
PhD in, you know what I'm saying? Like that shit actually exists. It's like, what the fuck?
You stole my point, man. That's exactly what I was gonna say, man. Like this military is so diverse, it's crazy, and not just like ethnicity wise, right? Just like even on financial scales, like how diverse it is ridiculous. And you can't really judge a book by its cover. Just like Mike said, man, I've had so many specialists, especially like immigrant specialists that have masters and PhDs, and like they're literally professionals in certain fields, or they were professionals where they came from. They came to America to get citizenship and then serve the country and stuff like that. So it's wild, man. Like you can get introduced and exposed to so much within the military, and that's one great thing. One awesome great thing about the military. So you spent 9 months, right, getting your financial education through YouTube. You got introduced to ADPI. You got, you're watching videos, reading books, and so on and so forth, right? What did you do with all that education, and what was the catalyst to like, hey, it's time to take action now? Like, I know enough to be dangerous. Let me take action.
Yeah, so I was set to PCS from Korea one of the first weeks in January. So it was like November prior to me PCSing, and I'm like, all right, like it's time to start pulling the trigger. I've been learning all this stuff for months now. I'm like, either I'm gonna do it or I'm not. So then I reached out on ADPI, sent a message on the Facebook group, and I'm just like, yo, anyone know a realtor in the Fayetteville area? From that point, ADPI got me in touch with Shelby Osborne from 5 Pillars, and we just started chatting from there. And I was like, yo, I'll be in the area, I want to say it was like February timeframe after my leave. But yeah, she was my real estate agent, and I'm like, I'm going to find a house and I'm going to house hack it. I'm going to make it work somehow. I don't know. I'm just going to figure it out. And it worked out great. Shelby helped me get a house, quickly got a roommate, started house hacking it, quickly got a girlfriend. She also moved in. Great house hack. And
brag is good for that.
Yeah.
I just like how you threw in that like quickly got a girlfriend.
Yeah, I believe me, I surprised
I was out in Korea for the longest time, man. I'm in the States, man. I'm ready to get me a girl now.
Yeah, surprised myself for sure. But yeah, had the house hack. And then before I even closed on the property, I think it was, Shelby asked me to go out to a Korean dinner with the 5 Pillars gang. And I'm just like, I mean, I don't really have friends. Sure, I'll hang out with my realtor. Why not? And I went to that dinner, hung out with everyone. Everyone's super cool. They started asking like how I felt about the Army. And I mean, I just told the truth, like, yo, the shininess of it is fading, I have some frustrations at that point. And they're like, all right, well, thought exercise. What if you left the Army, became a real estate agent, and used your commissions to fund your investing so you could retire? And I'm like, it literally took me like 15 minutes of thought, if that. And I'm just like, yeah, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna burn the ships and I'm gonna make this happen.
Dave Ramsey is somewhere frowning and you're just at your
I know, right?
Dave Ramsey.
Oh man. Oh, that's awesome though. So you burn the ships, man. You burn the ships, and you were like, hey man, that's it. Was there I mean, I'm assuming you talk to friends and family, right? About not 5 Pillars friends. I'm talking about other friends that aren't real estate investors, right? I'm assuming you talk to friends and family about your decision, what we were going to do next. How was that received? And like, what did you, how did you combat that?
Yeah. So I wouldn't say I talked to like long-term friends, right? Like I've had friends that I've known for years since childhood. I didn't really talk to them much, especially after Korea. Like in Korea, I very much isolated and had like my own thoughts, right? Like I made my own decisions, my own thoughts, real no outside influence. I love my parents. I didn't really listen to them. My mother could tell you I was rough to raise. like for instance, I joined the military, signed the paperwork, and I think it was at Thanksgiving, like a month after I signed the paperwork, I was like, oh, by the way, mom, like your boy's in the army. Kind of ruined the meal, but it was fine. So I didn't really tell anyone. It was like when I started the journey, it was very much for me and what I wanted. I was very selfish, and like for the first time in a weird way, I almost felt okay about that. And it was also different, right? Like I'm not married. I don't really have any other responsibilities. So I had that room to take that risk and burn those ships and be like, yo, I'm quitting this job and going into another one. And then just like seeing what'll happen, fully knowing that like I could fail.
You brought up a really good point. You said the words that in the moment you were selfish. And I want to take this opportunity to make sure that everybody understands that it is perfectly fine to be selfish. You have to preserve yourself. Okay. First, this is just like the whole, and I love this analogy. I can't remember where I read it. I didn't make this shit up, but as soon as the air masks come down in the airplane, you got to put it on yourself first before you can help somebody else. Because if you're blacking out while you're trying to put it on your baby and your baby can't help you, I mean, hell, that ain't no good, right? So you have to be selfish. And there are several successful people that say, absolutely, be self-focused first, get your finances in order. And now, from a place of abundance, you can help others. And so I really wanted to point that out. Like, there's nothing wrong with that term selfish. I just gets a lot of negative, annotation. Right. So I just wanted to make sure that we highlighted that while you said it. Be selfish. I'm actually going to write that down here.
So what did that, so you burned the bridges, you got your license, you had already got your first house hack at that point. What did the rest of your journey look like? So you got your license, you started selling houses immediately, or did you buy another rental, or like, what did that look like for you?
Yeah. So following that Korean dinner, I mean, I won't lie, in my head, I was still like, yo, am I insane? But I still had a couple months before I had a year before I ETS. And the reason that's like,
drop your packet.
The internship. I'm trying to remember my own time frame.
Yeah, CSP.
It's like a blur. But essentially, I had a couple months before I could submit my refrad packet. And then it was a little while after that before I could submit my paperwork for the internship program. So essentially the CSP program, career skills program, you can get an internship at a workplace 6 months prior to ETSing while getting military pay. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. We know all about it, man. It's
so like
awesome program.
I started that kind of like mental transition as well, even though like it was eating me up inside. But like I told myself like, hey, I still have like a good few months of like solid income where I can like plan this. I can go do the internship program for 6 months. And even if I just suck at being an agent for 6 months and don't sell anything, like I'm okay. There's food on the table. You know what I mean? So that's kind of how that process worked. COVID hit. Well, when did COVID hit? What was that, like
2020?
March, April?
It was like, well, they shut everything down like April, yeah. March of 2020, around that time.
Yeah, I'm super bad remembering timelines.
Yeah, I thought it was 2019. I'm not gonna lie to you. It feels like COVID's been around forever. So
I specifically remember when they shut stuff down because I was in command.
There you go.
I specifically remember.
It's just it feels like it's been forever. So it was 2020.
But yeah, they shut everything down. I was on rear D at that time because the rest of my battalion was deployed. So I'm sitting at home, not much work to do. I'm just like, well, okay, I'll start getting my license. So during that time, I got my real estate license, and pretty much around the October timeframe, my internship started. But there wasn't really much of an internship. I'm just like, yo, I got my stuff, like got my license. I'm prepped. Like, let's just start doing real estate agent work. So for those 6 months, my internship was really just me starting real estate work while still being covered by the military.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's one of the best things out there, guys. That career skills program, and it's a program involved in every branch. It's just called something different for every branch. I can't remember what it's called in the Marines and the Navy, but it's the same concept. So keep that in the back of your mind if you are considering transitioning, asking about that program.
You can go be a realtor, man, and start your next career off automatically. And it doesn't even have to be a realtor. Even if you want to go learn a trade or something like that, man, you can already start doing that. My NCO did the same thing. He's ETS now. He did the exact same thing. He went and started working like carpentry, carpentry
Nice. Yeah.
and like electrician, and he's doing the same stuff right now. So it's pretty cool. So you joined the CSP program, got your license, you started making some transactions. How long did it take you to get your first deal, like, or to do your first real estate transaction? Excuse me. What did that look like for you?
I think it took a little over a month.
Damn.
Don't quote
At the
me.
gate. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, typically you'll see, I mean, it ranges, right? Some people take 7 months, some people take 3 months, but, and you have to be expecting that in the position of sales, which is what real estate is. So, yeah, month is strong. I don't even remember, to be honest. It's been so long. It feels like it's been 4 years. Shit. But
yeah. I don't know. I mean, I was obviously like part of the 5 pillars group, which is, all investors, all like hot shot agents. I definitely like went into there like, all right, I need something to prove. And it was like, I would say, a little older, a little wiser. I was a little too hard on myself, but definitely would like beat myself up at the end of the day if I like wasn't making progress. I'm like, yo, something needs to happen. And then that like 6-month deadline of like, hey, the Army's not paying for anything anymore, just kept getting closer and closer. And that pressure built up.
Yeah, man. So you got to make something shake, man. So started making sales, and I'm assuming you started putting that into real estate. All right. So what did that look like for you, man? What was your first, or your second deal? But I'm assuming, well, let's just talk about your second deal. What did that look like for you, man? Yeah.
So second deal, I was still in my internship, and the best part is, remember that future fund that I mentioned, Dave Ramsey style? I never got rid of that. I came back from Korea with like 50-ish K in the bank. And then when I bought my house hack, it was with a VA loan. So like little to no money down, paid like $3,500 for closing costs. So I'm like, I got money to play with. Met up with a couple other 5 pillars agents, and we're just like, hey, let's like partner on a deal. Let's try and burst something. So we bought a rundown property, needed a lot of love, like a lot of love. And we just started working on it from there. And I would say we went a little too fast, but I think we're up to 9 units right now. So we just kept trying to go as fast as we can, which, like, lesson learned, slow down a bit, but it'd be what it'd be.
I love this. I love this, guys, because hindsight 2020, slow the fuck down. Everybody slow down. Like, I did the same thing. I went way too fast, and I'm paying for it today. But talk to us real quick about why you think you went too fast. I think that people need to understand. Here's 2 parts. One, you said that you held yourself to a higher standard in the beginning, and you were a little bit harder on yourself. So you beat yourself up. That's one. But I guess what the consequence of that was that you started now going too fast. And now hindsight being 2020, you're like, you wish you slowed down. So just speak on that whole mindset and experience.
Whew. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, being hard on myself definitely played a lot into it, right? This idea of like, 6 months from now, like, I don't have an actual paycheck coming in that's steady. So I'm like, I probably should start getting some investments that like pay me, not just cover my mortgage. You know what I mean? And then on top of that, I mean, like, I think like 99% of investors, like, I was listening to Bigger Podcast, like, or Bigger Pockets podcast, active duty passive income podcast, like anything and everything. You just hear these people of like, oh, I bought like 50 units in a year. I was burning left and right. And I was like, like, I'm just going to go as fast as I can. Let's see what happens. Turns out a lot can happen, and a lot of it's wrong. So we like bought this property. Before we even finished it, we bought like 2 more. We had an LLC, which I knew like the basics of an LLC. Didn't realize that BRRRRs are super cool when you get like a refinance and make money, but the books are totally out of whack, especially if I'm doing cash and my 2 other buddies are doing lines of credit. And like, we're still figuring that out, honestly. It's like compounding my problems going too fast, right? Because that first property, in hindsight, and this is what like I tell a lot of new investors now, is like, bro, just get your feet wet, right? Like, just see how it feels, like all that. But now I got 3 properties with 2 other partners. Money's everywhere. My bookkeeper hates me. And it's like, there's problems everywhere. It was a lot.
So let's dissect some of these, because I mean, I love the fact that you're speaking to this, and these are some serious lessons that can be learned, like setting your foundation right, working with partners, how does the money flow in and out, making sure you're not commingling funds, so on and so forth. There's so many things that go along with just getting multiple deals, but then also that second layer, and almost I'd say that most important layer, working with other people, right? Let's dissect like one of the later deals. How do you structure the partnership, right? How are you guys spending on what did the finances look like? Let's kind of give a quick tutorial, because I know someone's out there listening like, man, dude, I wanted to do a partnership, but I don't even know what I really need to look out for right here. Like, what should I be looking at, and what are some of the things that I should be doing?
So a big one is when you're making your LLC, oftentimes partners are like, hey, equal contributions, equal payouts, right? Like, we'll throw in the equal amount we need, and then we'll just get paid back out on the equal amount. Sounds great, right? But the issue is like, all right, well, what if partner A can put in 50 grand, but partner C is in a tight spot and can only put in 2? You know what I mean? So now it's like, it's totally uneven. You would have to make, essentially how we started clean our stuff up is like a loan that like everybody only contributed 2 grand, but now he's got a $48,000 loan, which is great and all. But when you guys start taking profits, you got to pay back his loan. So after speaking with a bookkeeper who invests himself, he recommended to me, and this is not like solid advice by any means, it's just how I'm probably going to be doing it from now on. It's just like proportional to what you put in, right? So if I put in like 75% of the cash in and you put in 25%, great. When we're taking profits, I'm taking 75% of that profit, we're taking 25%. Do you want to put more in and like essentially get more percentage? Like, cool. But it just makes things a lot easier, because now I'm in a problem where me and my other 2 partners are trying to like match each other's contributions, which is weird because I put all cash in, they put lines of credit, which I feel like I'm ranting right now. But when we pulled our money out, Burr got a little more than we put in, right? Top of the world, brand new investor. I just did a solid Burr. Problem is we paid back a line of credit. I didn't really get paid back. And then another buddy of mine got paid back lines of credit. So one of my buddies ended up he still owed money to this day, technically. Another buddy of mine owes money to the company, and I'm at like a flat even. And like, none of this was done intentionally, right? And I'm like, it's not like fights between me and the partners or anything, but we're just like, whoa, that was a slap to the face. We didn't think running a business is like that.
So you corrected it. So you started to make corrections for, I'm assuming, your second or third. After you realized that problem, you started to make corrections from there, and you do equal percentages based off of what the input is. How do you work it with that? I'm assuming that's working under the assumption that everyone is putting the same amount of work and time into whatever the project is at the same time.
Yeah. So that's another thing, right? Is very quickly we had to like identify our roles, because when we first created our LLC, super cool. We have an LLC, our names are on it, but it's like no one was taking action. You know what I mean? Like, no one was in charge. Nothing was really happening. We didn't know our jobs. So that's kind of where we had to start, is just divvying up like, all right, guys, we'll all look at like acquisitions. We'll like converse on what the numbers look like and whatnot, decide what to pull the trigger on. I'll be doing all the fun LLC stuff, all the accounts, we were making an Airbnb, so all the utilities and all that stuff. Another buddy of mine is going to focus strictly on financing, like figuring out which financing would be the best option. Another buddy of mine became the property manager, kind of like the Airbnb expert in the Fayetteville area, I would say. So he was digging into like Airbnbs, what would need to be done, staging all that stuff. So that's where we started gaining some traction. Does that answer your question?
No, that perfectly answers the question. Because I mean, I've been in a number of partnerships, and that's usually what the thing is. It's either how the money is input into the company, right? How it's taken out of the company, and then also work effort, like what identifying roles essentially, and then trying to combat that with like life happens. So like you got your dude that you were saying manages the Airbnb and probably talks to the host or the guests and so on and so forth, but sometimes life happens. So how do you cross organize like who's doing what? So I think those are extremely important lessons learned. But for anybody out there that's listening that's like saying, hey, I want to make a partnership, if you just go in it, man, you really, really got to think of those things, and you really got to get that stuff nailed down, or else you're gonna be hurting on the back end trying to figure out what happens, or your partnership may just end up crumbling.
Absolutely, man. And my biggest thing with partnership, just in general, is that so after you experience this, do you at least now feel like, instead of necessarily outlining you got to outline everything up front, but is it also a factor of working with people that you genuinely like?
Yeah. So separate LLC, different mix of partners, right? We had an issue to where just one partner wasn't really performing. Generally like the guy, but it gets tough, right? Especially when it's a different kind of pain, like money's leaving the wallet for everybody and it's hurting everybody. So if this is your question, maybe I'm answering it incorrectly, but being in a partnership with your friends is super fun until it gets tough, right? Because then it's tough to have those business discussions without people getting very personal about it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So my whole thing is I've had to not kick out. I've had to buy out partners that I didn't necessarily gel with. I've had long, hard conversations about leaving partnerships. I've had long, hard conversations about everything else. And ultimately what you realize is a couple of things. One, you can lay out all roles and responsibilities from the beginning. And in fact, you can put it in the operating agreement. But if you just put in the operating agreement and you don't hold people accountable, that was just a waste of fucking time, waste of time and ink. You know what I mean?
Yep.
I agree with you 110%. You have to work with people that you genuinely like as business partners, not necessarily as friends. I got a lot of friends that I would never fucking sign a piece of paper with. I'll be like, nah, bro, we good. We good. We cool. We can drink or something, but no. We're not gonna do business together. So that's a really good point, guys. And keep that in mind. Don't let your desire for growth and scale like put you in a position where it could hurt you in the long run. Like, you know, you have to be able to think critically.
Yeah, I would say there's pros and cons to having a partnership and going solo. Obviously, as a new agent, the pros of being in a partnership is, one, lower cost of entry to a property. Two, you can leverage each other's like knowledge on stuff. And like, I would say three, if you're going to put sweat equity into it, I mean, you got like three dudes there. If like, for whatever instance, I'm sick or something, like I still got two buddies at the property that are working on it. The only problem is like, well, I think primarily you're splitting profits three ways, right? Yeah. And that was kind of like a driver for why we wanted to go so quick. It's like, yo, there's three of us, like we need to start making money. And another con would just, you know, those like disagreements. You're essentially married to the guys, right? Like, I love my two buddies, but like I'm essentially married to them for life until we decide to dissolve the LLC, sell the properties, or whatever it be. But I could see myself in 20 years, like jumping and texting them, being like, yo, what's going on with this property? Like, you got to figure something out to do with it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, man, those are all like great points that I don't think we've really gone in detail about like about each of these and what it looks like. So, man, I thank you for kind of sharing that with us, man. But before we go, like I definitely want to like really dissect one of your properties. I'm talking about like nitty gritty, because I think this is what a lot of our listeners are listening for. Like, hey, how do I find a property? I want to be like Kamil over here. Like, how do I find a property? How do I how do I finance it? How do I run the numbers? Like, what does it look like for me? How does that work, man?
Yeah. So, I mean, we can just do the property I was just talking about. The first one is we found it from a wholesaler, right? Really beat up property. I was with my buddies. The three of us are agents. So we obviously have access to find out what the ARV is. It's just kind of what we do for work. Figured out that, you know, if we put enough work into this, it could be a burr. Met up with a contractor, went out there, got a good quote. We're like, all right, let's pull the trigger on this. And that's where like I used my money to acquire it. We had lines of credit come in. My two buddies had lines of credit, and that's how essentially we were funding everything.
How much was the property and how much was the renovation?
I honestly couldn't tell you off the top of my head. It's like buried in my laptop notes somewhere, but I'm sorry. I wish I had those prepped.
No worries.
I mean, there's a lot of lessons with this property if you want me to keep going on that, but essentially we anticipated reno being, I want to say like month, 2 months or something. And it was a pretty bad property. And we were putting our own sweat equity into it too. Like we were chopping trees down and there was like a jungle back there. Well, we had a contractor, which, you know, we trusted. We're like, yeah, we're buddies with this guy. And it's like typical mistake. And it's like what everyone will tell you, right? Like slap you to your face and tell you like, yo, get everything the contractor is going to do in writing, right? Check up on them, be on them like white on rice. We didn't do this with this guy, right? We trusted him. We knew people that used them. So we're like, we're good. We're going to get taken care of. We're just going to keep working at it. Reno took longer. Reno didn't get done to how we needed it to. Some stuff didn't get done at all. Other issues were identified. And I think definitely a lesson learned is me and my buddies put so much sweat equity into that. And what we started with was just this pile of garbage, really. And
you
just
said,
like
really quick, you said this was during COVID, correct? I'm just trying to kind of understand like what some of the renovation might have looked like, or maybe some of those problems would have been, but okay, go ahead.
Yeah. So we put a lot of work into this property and it was already like way overdue as to when it was supposed to be done. And relatively speaking, right, to us, compared to what we started with, like it's probably looked pretty good, right? We're going to throw it up. Let's just throw it up on Airbnb. We'll start making money. It wasn't great. Objectively speaking, like you look at it, it wasn't a great property. And we quickly realized that because guests started telling us about problems with the property that were happening. And we just started getting negative reviews and we're like, hey, we're shooting ourselves in the foot. So we ended up taking the property off the market, went in, like re-inspected it, started identifying issues that weren't fixed the first time, other issues that arose, and it just wasn't done to a good quality. And just kind of like lesson learned is like, don't get too emotionally attached, even if you're like there sweating in the sun every day. And what was the other one? Be on your contractor. And yeah, we ended up paying way more. I think we like doubled what we should have paid in reno costs because it wasn't done right the first time.
So God, I'm glad you said this. So everybody listening right now, I want you to understand something. Everybody that has been through this type of shit has said the same thing. Always be on your contractor. Make sure that you come, with an expectation and it's in writing. Make sure potentially that you get 2 quotes. Don't let your emotions get in the way. Be objective, so forth and so on. And it's coming from experience. And even from all of us who have read that shit and have been told that shit, we have done it. Everybody on this podcast has lost money to a fucking contractor. Yep. Guys, just do your due diligence. Do it right the first time. Otherwise, we'll have you on the show and you'll be telling us the same goddamn thing. So I'm glad you're sharing that though, because I think it's extremely important that people continue to hear it, right? These are lessons learned. And no matter how much you read, no matter how much you see on YouTube, no matter how much you are, spoken to until somebody's blue in the face, you have to kind of go through those experiences to really understand it. And what we're trying to prevent is that our audience, everybody listening, can avoid those experiences. Just listen, just fucking listen. So thank you for sharing that.
Mike's like 100% with that, dude. Like, cause I knew all of that stuff, and I actually did try all of that stuff. Like, I made sure I had a couple more, like I think 3 or 4 contractor quotes and all of that, and I still got burned. Even after trying, stayed on top of the contractor. Man, these contractors, man. Some of them are tricky, dude. Some of them are tricky. We made a video like a while back on how not to get screwed over by contractors, like 10 ways to not get screwed over by contractors like I did. You know what I mean? So I think that's definitely solid points, man. But I chalk it up to education though. I mean, I guarantee you like those little small things that you're learning, you learn with a contract. I think you said that was your first deal, right? Did you make the same mistake on your deals 2 through 9?
You want to know the worst part?
Oh, geez, man. I was trying to use you as a good example, man. Jeez.
Not only did I make the same mistake, but like same deal. Like one of my buddies knew this contractor, super good dude. Like he's a buddy and he wants to do real estate investing. So he struck a deal with him like, hey, we'll start a separate LLC. You can be a partner and you'll do stuff at cost. And like in return, you'll get, like a cut of the profits. But we can go faster and it'll open up more investment opportunities because rental won't cost as much. Got burned and now trying to figure that out with the LLC. So yeah, not only did I not learn my lesson the first time, I made it worse. I learned the hard way, I guess.
Oh man, you had to go back and repeat that course, man. But they're at the end of the day, they're all essentially what they all are, man. They're all courses, all lessons to be learned, man. And you can continue to, to add to your, real estate experience and keep moving forward, man. I want to end it on a good note though. Like, so yeah, I know you got 9 units, man. And I'm assuming you're cash flowing. I'm assuming because you started like at the beginning of 2020 or maybe like 2019 or something like that, that most of your stuff is appreciated significantly in value.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So even after all that, if you're listening, even after all that, you hear all the mistakes that Kamil's making, there's still money to be made, man. Like you can trip up, you can screw up. And I think someone else said it on a podcast, man, time heals all real estate wounds, basically, dude. Like it really does, man, because you can buy a piece of crap property, you can sink 50K into it, you can screw it up. And then in 20 years or 10 years, you hold that bad boy long enough, you're going to get your money back. You're going to get your money back, man. So yeah, I think that's good. That's good stuff, man.
Yeah, I will say this, like as many times as I got kicked in my teeth and like as many times as it was avoidable, like after 2 years, like I'm financially independent. Like granted, I'm not like balling, I'm not in a Lambo, but I live frugal, still have that Dave Ramsey kind of lifestyle. It's just like a habit for me. I don't need much. And like I'm financially independent now. I wouldn't change a thing.
Excellent.
That's the best part about this, guys, is you got to understand that, real estate is a vehicle to get us into these certain financial situations, but you can fuck it up just as fast as you got it. You know what I mean? 2 years, people are going to hear is fast, right? It is fast. But I mean, yeah, you can mess that up if you allowed for that lifestyle inflation and all this other stuff. So kudos to you for setting a perfect example of, hey, look, hard, focused work can actually yield the type of outcome that we're looking for. And the best part about it is you're just getting started. We still got a lot, we still got a lot more real estate to do. So we're running up on time now, but basically what we want to do is kind of summarize all of this stuff here. So you covered a lot of different lessons learned on your end, but if you had to give one piece of advice for somebody just getting started in their real estate journey, what would that be?
So I would definitely say define your failure, right? Like we always talk about defining your success. Like, what would it mean? Like, what does success mean to you? I think it's equally important to define what failure means to you. And this was kind of my mentality when I was like taking these big risks, leaving the military, doing a job I never thought I would do. It's like, I was completely okay if I messed myself up financially for years. I had to move back in with my parents in Chicago, and I had to get a part-time job selling like Chicago style hot dogs like I did in high school, right? That wasn't failure to me. Like I'm still in the game, I'm still swinging, I'm going to figure it out. Failure to me would have been if I just decided to quit and like not pursue it anymore. You know what I mean? I wasn't going to allow myself to fall off that journey, because then that would be true failure to me. I'm still to this day willing to get kicked in the teeth enough, but I'm still gonna make it work. Does that make sense?
No, that makes perfect sense. It's kind of like what people say is think of the worst case scenario. What is the absolute worst case scenario that can happen to you when it comes to that decision, whether I want to take a risk that I can potentially make a huge gain from, or not take a risk, or if you're hesitant about taking a risk because you think you might be failing, right? Think about the absolute worst case scenario. And for you, I mean, you pretty much said it, sleep on your mom's couch, selling Chicago hot dogs with no ketchup, right? That's a big thing in Chicago, right? No ketchup, only mustard.
Oh yeah.
But so that seems like that was kind of the worst case scenario for you. But then to add on to that, you're like, hey, what is failure to me? Define failure. And it's really just giving up, man. Like, I think that's awesome, man. That's brilliant.
I gotta say, man, I needed to hear those exact words tonight because I'm feeling like I'm struggling right now, just mentally and everything else, but I always say, it's funny is because Dan just brought it up. I always say, what's the worst that can happen? I always say that, but I've never heard it phrased that way as define your failure. So I really do like that. I like how that was kind of phrased, and it kind of puts that into a different perspective for people. Because what's the worst that can happen? At what point did I truly fail? And to your point, if you're dedicated, I mean, shit, just go through the ups and downs. You will succeed at some point or another, right? So I love that, man. I love that. Thanks for sharing that. And what's the last question there? Oh, obviously, people now are super pumped up and motivated, just like myself, and they want to know where the hell to find the Kamil. Where can people find you, man? How can they get in touch?
Instagram, Facebook. I started a YouTube channel. I have nothing up yet, but hopefully by the time you guys have this up, I will.
I'm gonna go find that bad boy real quick. I'm about to subscribe.
I don't think I have a headshot yet. Honestly, I have not picked a good
It's
photo.
just like a blank circle.
Yeah.
We're gonna subscribe anyway. We got you.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. I can like provide an email, phone number. I'm honestly like a super open book. And like part of the reason I love real estate is the community. Like everyone's super ready to chat and like help each other out. And I mean, it's one of my favorite parts. So yeah, anyone like feel free to reach out, just say hi.
Man. Give them the contacts. Where do they reach you at? Feel free to give whatever you want to, and then we'll put them down in the show notes. We got your stuff, and we're going to put them down in the show notes either way. But still, if they want to hear you on the airwaves, maybe they're driving, and
Airwaves.
Well, what's up? You can go.
Oh, you mean like my actual phone number and email right now?
If you
whatever you want to give, whatever you want to give. Don't be giving out your mama's phone number and stuff. Whatever you want to give.
Yeah, no. Instagram, just Kamil Baldyga. YouTube, Kamil Baldyga. It might be a little hard because it's a super weird name. Facebook, Kamil Baldyga. And then I'll just shoot you guys my like email and phone number. You can throw it into the notes, and I think it'll be the best.
Got it. Excellent. Hey man, well, thanks so much for coming on, Kamil. It's been great conversation. Loved everything you shared with us. You got any last words?
No, really appreciate you guys having me on. This was awesome.
Excellent.
Yeah, man. I love it, man. Thank you for coming on and sharing that knowledge. I'm going to literally be running around talking about define your failure. That's my new motto for 2022. I love it.
All right, man. Well, with that, hey, if you're listening to this on podcast, and hit that follow button or hit whatever button you need to. I don't know what button is on podcast, man, but leave us a 5-star review. We really appreciate those too. If you're watching this on YouTube, leave us a comment below. If you got a question for Kamil, I'm sure he'll be on there. You heard he got a YouTube page, so make sure to go to that and subscribe as well. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and then share this with any service members that may find this valuable, man. That's the key thing. We're here talking about how cool it is to be in this network and to be talking to other real estate professionals who are also in the military or have served in the military, man. Share this information, man. Everybody's not exposed to it, so it really helps us out. With that, you got anything, Mike?
No, that's it.
All right, this is Dan Wynn.
And Mike Glaspie
signing off.